You're listening to the Joy Tax Podcast, a conversation series for parents and caregivers raising a child or teen with complex chronic conditions. The normal parenting wisdom doesn't fit the situations we are living through. This is a forum to share, affirm, and learn from each other. It's also a window for allies to listen in and gain deeper insight into the world we inhabit. This podcast is not a substitute for medical guidance. We encourage you to always talk to your healthcare provider before making any medical decisions. This is Mercedes, and you're listening to the Joy Tax Podcast, and I'm here today with Kimberly Burwick. We spoke last fall about our anticipation for the school year, and I recently posted that episode. And here it is now spring break for us, or nearly spring break. It is snowing where I live in Alaska. Maybe it's warmer where you are, Kimberly. I don't know. But we've had very different trajectories this year. So I wanted to touch back in on that. What has your year been like? Your school year?
I'm so glad we're having this conversation because I remember when the school year started out, we were both sort of like terrified, as we always are, for what's going to happen this year. And our kids have done very similar interventions, not necessarily at the same time, not necessarily the same milligrams, but we've done really similar things. And I think you and I were talking maybe a week or two ago about like, okay, is this MECFS? Is it long COVID? Or is there actually a distinction between the two? Um, because the first day of school, my kiddo tried to do a full day and he crashed for the next 2 months, wasn't able to go at
Mhm.
all. Um, we tried some of the interventions that we had tried before, and it has just been a year of, "Really? We're doing this for a 4th year?"
Mhm. Can you remind me? We kind of both had different goals for our kids for school this year. What was
Mhm.
your hope at the start of the school year?
Our hope was that, our son could go in person, that's really what he wanted to do, for 8th grade and have, the quote, unquote, "normal," middle school
Mhm.
experience, or even go in person part of the day and just feel like a member of, kind of society. Um We then backtracked and decided to try 1 hour a day, which at maybe the point of October absolutely became impossible. Even 1 hour a day of school was just it wasn't gonna happen. Um, and so we pulled the plug on that and, decided, "Okay, well, we'll bring tutors into the house, and we'll replicate kind of what he was gonna do at school here," which some weeks it's worked really well. Um, but it's been really odd. Like, often he'll have a great Monday and Tuesday, and then the next 7 days he can't move.
Mhm.
And it doesn't necessarily seem like PEM. I mean, it could be. Um, but it seems to come no rhyme, no reason. He'll be feeling like maybe we're turning the corner, and then the full body pain, the horrible sick flu feeling. Um, and Yeah, it's a really different year than we were hoping for.
K
And you, tell me about your experience with your kiddo.
Well, our goal was to go to school 3 mornings a week, and then, as you know, we have hanger-outers that my daughter hangs out with in between the times,
Mm,
and I it was successful. She was able to do 3 mornings a week. By the end of the fall semester, we were adding in more mornings. Last year, the hanger-outers all came to our house, and this year,
mm,
I found somebody whose house she went to, which also seemed to break up the monotony. She had been talking
yeah,
about feeling isolated last year, even though
mhm,
we did have these hanger-outers, and so that was all really helpful. And then really recently, she started going. I mean, when I say recently, this past week, she tried doing 2 full days, and, we we talk all the time about, is it here? Does she still have it? Is it gone? We're in this phase, and I know this is a really lucky, and it does feel like luck because there is no cure. There is no one path, but her baseline and her stability has improved throughout the year. But it's not, yeah. So I never finished to say what she had to do this year. She or this week she went to school 2 full days. Um,
That's amazing.
and both those days, though, she did check in with the school nurse for different passing symptoms. And the school nurse, whom I adore, took her seriously and knows all the management things. In fact, something happened where I mentioned to the school nurse, she had a cardiac workup done, but there was nothing there. And the nurse took a deep breath and she said something like, "That we know of yet, that we know how to measure for yet." And I thought that was amazing because normally I'm the one coaching people through that. And I wasn't trying to be dismissive of my
Yeah.
daughter's symptoms. I was just um, acknowledging that what she had come into the nurse's office was part of the spectrum of stuff that has happened. So, but one of the big differences this school year is that, and if you're not comfortable talking about this is fine, but
Oh, no, no, this is great. The more we talk about it, maybe we'll help somebody else.
but but we've had really solid school support, right? We've had,
That's incredible.
yeah,
Yeah.
and you guys not so much.
Nope. It has been, a struggle for school, really just even trying to prove, even despite 5 pages of, documentation and diligent notes from the doctor, we still felt like, of course, we had to prove that he's sick, and, of course, they really got fixated, "Well, is he going to therapy?" And that just everything felt like a roadblock, and, I think what we talked about earlier is this was the 4th school year that we had Child Protective Services called on us for truancy, even though literally in his 504 plan, it said, "You cannot count this as truancy." Um, so again, it was dismissed you know, with nothing, but it certainly didn't make him feel supported, to even go for that 1 hour.
Well, and when you say it was dismissed with nothing, it actually caused a lot of harm, right?
It did, yeah. I mean, it was incredibly stressful again. And what child wants to go to a school where they have to prove that they're sick and, um, clearly they're not being believed because otherwise, why would they accuse the parents of truancy?
Mhm. What can I ask, what is it like when, protective services comes to your house?
You know, um, it's strangely, we're used to it, which nobody should ever have to get used to that, but it's terrifying. Um, they don't give a warning, they don't call. They arrive at the house, they say, "May I come in?" And we've been advised to say, "Sure,
Mhm,
come on in." And now we have sort of like a binder. We're like, "Here's his binder," but they always have to send a new person, and it's usually somebody who's just started. Um, they're usually under 25. They usually have never heard of long COVID or MACFS, and they're just doing their job. But it's incredibly stressful because um, one misstep in the way that you're talking about your child, they can easily say, "You know what? Let's take your child out of your house." Um, so it's really, you feel really powerless. It's obviously terrifying for the child, terrifying for the parents, and it's um, when you're talking about your child living in fight or flight, like their bodies,
mhm.
doesn't do a whole lot of good for that, for the autonomic nervous system.
We've talked in the past, in my 20s, probably when I was about 25, a little bit older, I worked for a child advocacy center where my job was to interview kids when there was allegations of child abuse, and I know the system is imperfect, but, I mean, it's very, very, very imperfect. But one of my surprises going through this as a parent, and I've never had it's called Office of Children's Services here, OCS. I've never had OCS called on us, but I have been astounded that there are no protective measures in place for
Mhm.
parents on and kids on any level of chronic illness. Like you said,
None.
parents are left
Yeah.
feeling like they're responsible, like this is somehow what do they call it? Munchausen syndrome by proxy, that you are somehow
Mhm.
coaching your kid to be sick.
Yeah, exactly, and they always take the child into a different room and talk to them, which is obviously difficult if your child is
Yeah.
bedbound and can't really get up. It makes them look like they're drugged when in fact they haven't slept in 5 days.
Mhm.
Thankfully, our child is old enough to articulate that, but, it makes us wonder, okay, well, for the next few years, what type of school, if the goal is to get him to school in person, what type of school? Do we go to public school where there are services? However, you know, yeah, it really it kind of makes you wonder.
Yeah. So while that was happening to you across the country, we had a 504 plan and our doctor was willing to sign off on just about anything that was in the scope of what my daughter was experiencing, but we called it post-exertional malaise, and I did that strategically because I was afraid that the other terminology, even though that's accurate, carry a lot of bias, and I didn't
Yeah,
want her to carry that, and I thought if people Googled post-exertional malaise, they would get pretty solid information. I had a really or have had just a really good relationship with the teacher. Her teacher has done things like I sent her home with homework today, but I wrote at the top not to do all of it. And she has made sure to
yeah,
only give her enough work to assure that she understands the subject, but isn't rote or
mhm.
overdoing it.
That's
They
incredible.
sent her to Mhm.
And
Go for it.
I wonder, because you live in a pretty small town and your family's really well embedded there, and
Mhm.
everyone knows you, and your family is well loved and respected. Do you think that has any part in how supported your kiddo felt?
I think so. Before all of this, I was involved in the PTA. I did the things. I did
Mhm.
post on social media about what we were going through, and on my Facebook page, I have a lot of local connections. And I received a lot of support. Nobody said to me, "Do you think that your child is faking it? Or maybe this is just anxiety?" At least in the community. In doctors' offices, it was different. But even still,
Yeah.
I don't think that local doctors wished my daughter harm. I don't think that they
Mm.
anticipated how weird it could get. But I do think having
Yeah,
those connections, what has been a tremendously protective factor, and it has been a part of her recovery. For example,
that's
um,
amazing.
this
Yeah.
week, she started drama club as well, and we've been really wanting her to do an activity to be able to build her social connections back up. And I happen to know the drama teacher. We happen to be in book club together, and I made book club read The Puzzle Solvers. What's it called? The Puzzle Solvers' Son.
Oh, I don't know that
It's
one.
by Ron Davis, Whitney Defoe's father, or it's not by him, it's about him
Oh,
and
okay.
his research to solve ME/CFS, and I had book
Mhm.
club read it because they're my friends and I wanted them to know what we were living through, and so and
Yeah,
also this book club or this drama teacher also tutored Evelyn last year, and so she just called me up and she said, "What can I do to support Evelyn?" Right?
that's amazing. Yeah, I wonder, we moved here right before COVID, so we literally had no connection
Mhm.
with anyone here with the public school, and then, as soon as COVID broke out, and then it was everybody go to their separate spaces, um, then Levi got sick. So, I wonder if it would have been different having, lived here for a very long time or not.
The flip, though, that I would say to that is why Does it have to be so hard to believe in human suffering? I mean, yes,
That's a good point.
we put the label MECFS on it and long COVID and chronic illness, and I mean, these are just flavors of human suffering, right?
That's so true. That's such a good point. Yeah,
Where
absolutely.
where are things right now for you guys?
So right now, they're just sort of mind-boggling and
Mhm.
bizarre. We found out that our kiddo's iron was almost non-existent. His saturation was only at 8%.
Wow.
And right before the holidays, I think December 22nd, we did an iron infusion. And for the next 2 weeks, he was changed. I mean, I almost forgot he had ever been sick. And, we maybe celebrated a little too early. And we did a second iron infusion and he tanked. And for the last 2 months, he's been in excruciating body pain, um, muscular, bone, fatigue beyond fatigue, the nausea, the constant nausea, the insomnia, basically back to bedbound or housebound. Um, and we don't know what it was about, the iron, if it stimulated his immune system too much, or if we're sort of investigating his microvasculature right now, or if there are microclots and that really kind of made it worse. um but yeah, we always get excited if he's able to come downstairs, and he's maybe come downstairs just a few times in the past few weeks. And he'll say, okay, I need to go lie down. um his capacity for standing for a long time is not very strong. So I don't know how we're back here. Thankfully, we're not back to, knock on wood, paralysis and daily migraines and stuff like that. But nobody really should have to celebrate not having paralysis.
You took a really fun trip in January, didn't you?
We
Tell
did.
me about that.
We absolutely did. It was amazing.
Mhm.
It was about a week after he had his first iron infusion, and it was like having our kid back. He went swim. I had trouble keeping up with his energy. We went swimming. He ate and ate and ate with no nausea. He ate like he was eating for five,
Wow.
um, and was just calm, not wired, tired. Um, his brain lit up. I mean, just voracious for, let's watch this documentary, let's play chess, let's do this. I didn't know how fleeting that could be. But it also does tell us that his body has that capacity to feel good. Um, I feel like we're missing the secret key.
The secret ingredient. What
Mhm.
Tell me about the grief, though, because there's a special different grief when you've achieved a
Mhm.
level of wellness and then it's gone again.
The grief is big. Watching him just feel amazing, and then suddenly that's all taken away again. Um, we try to keep things really light here. We try to laugh a lot. We're total inappropriate humor. Um, and that's really kept us going. But the grief, we don't talk about it a whole lot, but it's there like one of those weighted blankets.
Mhm.
And gosh, yeah, I just look forward to a time where we can not live in that daily
Yeah.
grief.
I can't wait for that space where maybe you even get to forget how much it hurt for a while.
That would be amazing. But, I think, okay, if it only takes a few days and I can forget that he was sick, that's, that's huge. We can do that
Mhm.
again if we can just regulate things. Um, we've been doing a lot of research. I think I had mentioned the microvasculature, about how, because I keep thinking, well, those 2 weeks he had so much oxygen to all of his tissues. Like, how can we replicate that?
Mhm.
Is it in the blood vessels? Is it? um, in is it micro like how do we just increase the oxygen in his entire being? Um, I feel like if we can do that, then we might get to a better place.
And this is also where we started theorizing that maybe my daughter didn't have long COVID. She never got tested for spike proteins or any, she was really a lot of testing, but the thing that became her
Yeah.
diagnosis was autonomic nervous system dysfunction.
Mhm.
And and she does not fit the criteria anymore for ME/CFS, although I think I really believe it's a spectrum.
That's
But
amazing.
I wonder if she wasn't having to handle the issues with long COVID, if that's what,
Yeah.
allowed her to
I
recover.
I really wonder too, because when he was tested, when he did the COVID, the long haul panel, his results were off the
Mhm.
charts. I mean, it was like 10,000 times the amount of spike protein antibodies. Like
Wow.
it it looked like he had just gotten like 25 boosters the day before. Like things were completely gone awry, and that was 3
But
years
he's never
into it.
tested positive for COVID, has he? That's wild.
That is the strangest thing. Only once, and it was the faintest blue line, and every other time we know that he's had COVID only because I would get it a week later, and my line was like bright blue, and we'd have all the same symptoms. But it's really crazy because he doesn't test even on a PCP
Mhm.
or PC, what is it? PCR?
I can't remember.
I don't know. But it won't ever test positive. Um, so it's hard to know, okay, does he have another COVID infection or is this just all of the same?
Reactivation,
Um,
perhaps?
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's wild.
Does he tend to do better in the summer? I know a lot of chronic ill people tend to do better in the summer.
He actually doesn't. The heat is can be really hard on him. Um, he loves that sort of that cold threshold of maybe like 50
Mhm.
degrees. Not too hot, not too cold. We did notice, and now we've had to sort of like put the kibosh on it. He feels terrible after swimming in warm water. So we have a pool slash hot tub, and he, obviously wants to go in because it feels great on his muscles. Every time he does, he tanks.
Mm.
And he has to prove it to himself again and again. Even 2 hours ago, we went in, and after about half an hour, he said, "This was a terrible idea. I don't even think I can get out. I'm so nauseous. I'm so dizzy. I can't move." So, but he's cognizant, like he wants to move his body
Mhm.
around. He wants to get exercise because he knows just lying there is not going to help either. So the heat is kind of a double-edged sword.
One of the things that I admire about you so much, and I admire many things about you, is your research. When something doesn't work, you pivot and you go, okay, now I'm looking at what Japan is doing. I'm looking at what Norway's
Exactly.
doing. Can you tell me about your
I have
stamina
found
for that?
amazing things. I let myself feel kind of sad and blue for like a day, and then I'm like, okay, well, that's not productive.
Mhm,
I have to feel like I'm at least trying. Um, because there is so much out there that's just not publicized.
mhm,
It's crazy. There is a Japanese traditional medicine has, I mean, these are over the counter herbs, basically, fruits and vegetables into little granules that they're now doing major testing on for long COVID that you can just walk into the pharmacy and grab it like gum. And one of them stabilizes the autonomic nervous system. One of them helps nausea. Like,
mm.
that's just wild to me. And, maybe it doesn't work for everyone, but maybe it does. So I just have to keep researching.
Sometimes I get the sense when I'm looking at research that other countries are doing, I wonder, are our kids just being forgotten? And then I remember in those countries, I think those kids and those patients sometimes feel just as invisible as they do here. It's just maybe our algorithms now for Google and social media dish up all of the chronic ill people and information.
I think so too, because I work with international students and I talk to their parents and they're like, "Oh, we didn't even know there's something
Mhm,
called long COVID or ME/CFS. Like, it's not publicized here."
mhm.
So, um, some of the countries of the my students live in, it's just as much of a mystery there.
It is so massively unfair, and I would like to think that it's just long COVID and it's just ME/CFS, but these things actually make me wonder about all the other forms of invisible suffering that maybe I'm not aware of, that maybe I've dismissed. In that regard,
Yeah.
maybe going through this has made me a better human, although I don't know, I had a pretty high tolerance for recognizing human suffering before. I didn't want
I
another
think
lesson.
you're adapted, yeah. I think you're pretty tuned in.
What, where are you planning to go from here?
That's a really great question. I just watched a really good podcast about he's an 18-year-old now who was a nationally ranked triathlete, and his parents found him on the floor. And, very similar to our child's story. And after 35 doctors, he finally found one who said, "I can tell you what's wrong." And he has the only doctor who has the capacity in his lab to look definitively for
Mm.
microclots. So we've looked at so many other things. I think we're going to be in the vascular section for a little while. Um, we are going to test next week for microclots. We send a little sample and you overnight it, and that doctor looks at it with his high tech machinery. And we'll start with extremely low anticoagulant type therapy, not your traditional triple therapy. Um, we've reinstated lumbrokinase instead of nattokinase. Lumbrokinase actually does something with the fibrin or fibrogen or who knows what. But they're finding it's as effective, if not more effective, than triple anticoagulant therapy.
Did you ever
So
think you
we're
would have
starting
words
that.
like that in your brain?
No, and I know I can't even pronounce them correctly, but they just roll
Mhm,
off my tongue now.
mhm.
We are going to do a lot more blood work. We are going to do true dose again, which is intravenous PRP. I think your daughter's done it 3 times, 4 times,
4 times. Yeah,
four
4
times.
times.
We're actually going to do that next week. We don't know if it's going to make things worse or tremendously better. We have had some amazing results from the first few, where he went from 12 medicines to one
Wow.
in like a 2-week period. But I'd say we're at 50% and we're sort of chasing. We don't have to get to 100, but we're sort of chasing down that next 30%.
If we're at 85 right now, I mean, I feel like we've
That's
stolen something, and I don't know what
awesome.
100 looks like because I'm scared to try. You've seen us when we thought
Yeah.
we had crossed all the bridges and we thought we had made it,
Yeah.
and we hadn't, and it is a special kind of grief.
I will say, talking to friends like you whose child is improving, it's really helpful. Um, you know, some people might say, "Oh, well, doesn't that make you feel worse?" And it doesn't. It's like, "Okay, she can do this. We can do
Mhm.
this."
I do try to be
It's
sensitive though because it's unfair, like, why.
Of course you are. You're the most sensitive, awesome person ever. But it is really helpful because, um, they say misery loves company, but not really for us. Like, we really like some positive reinforcement.
I couldn't sleep last night, and I was going over the pictures of the last few years, and I took a picture at one point of a tray of blood vials that were Evelyn's. I think there were 13 or 14 vials of her blood, and I just shook my head. All these things that we ask our kids to do, and
Yeah,
I would gladly, I mean, with her consent, donate a vial of blood to study the before and after. Why is she okay now? What is the
yeah,
difference in order to help other kids get well again? In the same way that we need to research these pediatric chronic illnesses, we also need to research why people are getting better and track that.
yeah. Oh,
How
I
how
agree.
would you tell a parent, I mean, you just rattled off all kinds of different medical information. Trudose
Yeah,
isn't FDA approved. None of the things that we pursue for our kids
none of them are,
are
and they won't be for
for years
years.
are traditional, and that's really actually pretty scary, right? We both come from backgrounds in education. We value best
Right.
practices, and yet here we are, you know, crowdsourcing with other moms and parents, good paths.
Exactly.
How
Yeah.
would you recommend a parent do this safely?
That is a great question. I wouldn't trust Google. Google can send you on so many, wild goose chases, but there are so many of us now
Mhm.
that have tried this and that, and even with, the advent of ChatGPT, you can say, "Hey, please list 20 of the major studies that have been done, which have been successful, which have gone to phase 3." And, I mean, that will give you pretty solid information. Um, and, if you are more inclined to only do sort of homeopathic, same thing. Which countries are doing homeopathic and why and what's the benefit? I really think that to find a doctor who's willing to talk about it with you and to say, hey, look, none of these are going to be FDA approved in the next 20 years. If we're lucky, maybe one or two, but we're not going to wait 20 years to try to help your
Yeah.
child. Like, find a doctor who's willing to be comfortable in the off label because that's all we have right now.
Nobody
And,
nobody wants to
no, yeah,
experiment
exactly.
on a child, but nobody, unless you're in it, you don't understand that doing nothing isn't an option either.
Exactly. And when did we start? When was on label? When did that start? Maybe 100 years ago?
Mhm.
Not even. If you look at the history of off label, we've been treating off label for thousands of
Yeah.
years. Um, so as long as you have a doctor who's willing to be in that quote unquote off label with you, um,
And I think you're really
yeah,
also talking about having a relationship with a doctor, not just a doctor who's
definitely.
writing scripts for you, but who is, committed to exploring and being curious.
Yeah, absolutely. And, so many of the doctors right now are private pay, which is really difficult. And if you are in a position to do it, do it. And if you're not, fundraise because that's really where the doctors are going to be most helpful. They have the time to do it because they're not spending all their time,
Mhm.
arguing with insurance companies.
So, I always end episodes with what's getting you through this next week? What's getting you through this next week? And is there anything we
That would
haven't said?
you.
Is there something we that's on the table that we have forgotten to talk about before we do that?
I'll answer in two ways. One, your
Okay.
friendship. So anytime you're going through this, grab a good friend who's willing to go through it with you. And anything else we haven't chatted about? I guess, you told me maybe a year ago it was the best advice. You said, look, when my son wasn't getting better, and I said, what about 2 months from now? And you said 2 months for long COVID or MACFS is like 2 years. Like, things can shift so
Mhm.
fast, that if it starts to feel endless, there are those shifts that can happen.
I think that's true. I think sometimes a week can feel like a decade. Every day is
It does.
so different. I was
Yeah.
somebody commented recently, actually on the last podcast you and I did, that it feels lonely to not have a friend, and it really stuck in my heart. And I messaged people and you messaged people, and my daughter
Mhm.
teases me. She said, "Mom, one of these days you're gonna bring home a serial killer." And I've promised her that I really feel like I have better people sense than that. Um,
That's great.
but I would just encourage listeners to reach out to somebody and ask questions. I have found that on social media in these groups, I have tended to find friendships that are parallel to my in what do they call it? IRL, in real life friendships,
Yeah, yeah.
and there are so many people who are lonely, and just having somebody to text back and forth every day, or it doesn't have to be every day, but who is who is there for you for
Yeah,
those exciting things and for the scary
absolutely.
things, because there's
And
a lot
and
of scary things.
I will say, the friends I've had, lifelong friends who I thought would always be there, not all of them really were.
Mhm,
And then people, like yourself, who I didn't know 3 years ago.
mhm.
I can't even imagine a day going by without, hey, how's it going?
Yeah,
Or texting,
yeah,
or, oops, sorry, in a meeting, but just checking
yeah.
in.
I
Yeah.
There have been some really profound friendships and relationships that
Yeah.
we've discovered through this, and the same that there are people that have shown up for us in ways I never would have expected, and there have been people who haven't shown up, and you know what? It's okay, right? People have a
Yeah.
bandwidth, and not
Mhm.
everybody is made to walk this path. Although nobody
Absolutely.
asked us if we wanted to.
Yeah, we
I would
didn't
have
get that
said,
choice.
"No, thank you. I will be
Pass.
supportive anyway." Of,
That would be a hard pass. Yeah.
and I remember saying to my daughter at one point, "I wish I could trade bodies with you," because she was in so much pain. And I know that your
Mhm.
son has been in a lot of pain, and there have been times.
The pain is really that's
Yeah,
difficult. I would say, watching your child just writhe around in pain and not be able to make them feel better, that's really
yeah.
tough. Um, but just sitting there, being there,
Mhm,
even if you're half asleep, just being there.
mhm. Your son is so lucky to have you as his mom. I'm so lucky to have you as a friend. I'm really grateful for you coming back on
Back at you.
to, give an update, and I also wanna shout out if there are any listeners who are ever interested in sharing your story and being a part of the conversation, please reach out. My email is joytaxpodcast@gmail.com, and it would really be lovely to bring more people into the conversation and raise the visibility of these kids and families who are struggling so much.